The federal government has finally kick-started the process of turning its capital gains tax changes into law. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland tabled the motion in Parliament after it was announced in the April federal budget. The tax hike has been controversial and is likely to create a stir in the House of Commons this week as the Liberals aim to corner the Conservatives in particular on their position. Let's bring in the CBC's Karina Roman on this now. So Karina, walk us through what Minister Freeland announced today.
So today was the introduction of the Ways and Means motion. I have all 50 plus pages here. And so people sometimes think a motion is something small. It's basically all the details of what they plan to do when they do finally bring in legislation. It's the first step in the process when we're talking about changing taxation policy. And it's no departure from the budget. If people were looking for surprises or exemptions, it's exactly what they said was going to happen in the budget. So just to remind viewers, right now, capital gains, 50% of your capital gains are taxable. That is going to increase to 2/3 or around 66%. For individuals, it'll move up to 66% of anything capital gains wise that you make after $250,000. For corporations, there is no such threshold. So that's exactly how they outlined it in the budget. There's still a principal residence exemption. You sell your home, what you make, that's not subject to that. They're still going ahead and upping the lifetime capital gains exemption for those who want to sell small business shares, farming and fishing property. There's going to still be that Canadian Entrepreneurs Incentive, which is to make sure that they get a tax advantage as well in terms of small businesses. A vote on this could come as early as tomorrow. We don't have exact timing on that. And we do expect it to pass because the NDP have said they're supportive of it, although they're critical of the Liberals in that they say, where have they been? We've been calling for this for 9 years. It's like, are they just waking up to this? But they still seem to be supportive of this. Then comes the legislation eventually, but I should mention it goes into effect June 25th, regardless of whether we get to legislation by that point, because as you know, with taxation changes, they can go ahead into effect and CRA can start enforcing it even before we have the legislation in place.
Okay, so it is as advertised in the budget. There's not a bait and switch here, but there was a lot of criticism of this when it was in the budget from specific groups who don't want to see it. But the target of this, in addition to the argument of generational fairness in the tax changes, is the Liberals want to force a vote on this motion this week because, Karina, they want to target the Conservatives on this. So what happens now? Where do you think it goes? Yeah,
so they separate it out. So we have this separate legislation. It's not part of the budget legislation. They will force a vote, and we will see. The Conservatives so far have said they don't know how they're going to vote because they hadn't seen it yet. Well, now it's out. We still don't know how they're going to vote, but if they support it, then so it's no longer the wedge issue, I suppose, that the Liberals are looking for in terms of who you favor, the people who need the money versus the uber rich, how they framed it. But they might vote against it and hitch their fortunes to opposition to this tax change. We're thinking business lobby groups, small businesses who are still concerned that this will take too much of a bite out of the money that they earn, and as well doctors, which we've talked about, physicians, in terms of those who incorporate so that they will not have that individual exemption of $250,000. So if the Conservatives try and hitch their wagon to that side of things, maybe they can make the case that it's not actually about just taxing the very wealthy, and that there may be threats to, have this great exodus of doctors out of the medical system. So we'll have to wait and see because they have not indicated how they're going to vote yet.
Okay, Karina, thanks so much. That's the CBC's Karina Roman. And this capital gains increase, this is the next topic we want to talk about with the Power Panel. Vandana Cotter, Rob Russo, Brad Levine, and Lisa Raitt. We're listening in on that. Lisa, as the Conservative in this fine August panel, how do you think the federal Conservatives are going to vote on this? They're not really a party known for liking tax hikes, and Pierre Poilievre is not a politician known for liking capital gains in particular. What do they do?
Indeed. I think it's an honest pause that they're taking right now because from my experience being in caucus, when Wednesday rolls around, that's when you get an opportunity to talk about these things. Maybe there is a difference of opinion amongst the caucus members with respect to how to handle this Ways and Means motion, but they'll make their decision together and then they'll come out and they'll announce it. I think saying that they want to study the motion makes a lot of sense because it actually feeds into how we deal with these kinds of issues where they don't quite know which way they're going to go.
Do you see a world, though, Lisa, where you can spend a lot of your time saying axe the carbon tax, axe the gas tax, take the GST off gas, to vote for a tax that, while the Liberals say it's for mostly wealthy Canadians, people with cottages they want to sell, doctors who incorporate. Is there a world where they can vote for that politically?
Oh, I hope not. I mean, as a conservative, I can tell you that I'm deeply uncomfortable with this for the message that it sends that investing your after-tax dollars isn't going to be rewarded in this country. We have a huge problem with business investment, with personal investment in this country as it is. And we're taking away another reason why it may be okay to invest your dollars instead of spending them. And as a result, I'm not a big fan of this tactic that's being used in order to bring more money out of Canadians. And I think it's politically, I don't know where it lies, though. I mean, obviously, the Liberals must think that this is a win for them in some way, shape, or form to be going at it this hard. I don't see the upside on this. I see a lot of negativity. And I guess, unfortunately, we're at the point in time, David, where politics is going to be making the case in a lot of this. Though that being said, I'm not surprised the Liberals are trying to get more money out of the system because they have a pretty deep deficit hole they got to fill next year.
So Brad, New Democrats are not nearly as allergic to tax hikes as Conservatives are, but you do like family doctors. You do like family doctors.
Yeah.
And they would qualify as wealthy, and they would incorporate, and a lot of them are saying that this is a tax on access to medical care. What do you think the Conservatives will do? Because the New Democrats already said they're going to vote for it. How do the Conservatives position this?
Right. Well, I think as you see Conservatives try to squirm and try to figure it out, that is by design. And for once, I think that the Liberals are trying to do politics, right? This is what it's all about. You take your opponent, especially when you're 20 points behind in the polls or double digits behind in the polls, and you have to start developing some wedges. You got to start laying down some narrative between now and the next federal election. Again, a year and a half away. It's high time the Liberals started doing that. They should be doing this. They should be advertising. They should be doing a whole bunch of things, but at least using the levers of Parliament to expose the differences between the government and the official opposition. So let's call it that. High time. Start playing some politics with Pierre Poilievre. And if you don't like it, then don't watch Parliament because that's what this is all about. Now, the Conservatives, I can't imagine a world. I agree with Lisa. I can't imagine a world in which the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre are going to vote in favor of increasing capital gains taxes as proposed. If they do, then it takes a lot of wind out of the sails of the contrast, but it also makes them look very hypocritical. They don't like the carbon tax. They don't like personal income taxes. They want to reduce the sales taxes historically, but all of a sudden capital gains. Maybe if they do vote in favor of it, they could say we'll carve out doctors later. For sure, elect us. But listen, the business community is opposed to this tax increase. But let's be honest, where are they voting? Right, even if Poilievre were to vote for it, which I don't believe they are, I think they're going to say no because of the doctors and because of small business people. But that maybe the wealthier could pay a little bit more for some kind of equality play. But right. Where's the business vote going in this country? It's already with the Conservatives. So it's pretty hard to alienate that base, especially if you signal that you'll tweak it after the next election. So this squirming that we're seeing among Conservatives, that is by design.
So Vandana, what is it about this? And imagine that, a government that's 15 to 20 points down the polls playing some politics with policy. But what is it about capital gains in particular that the Liberals think is such an effective wedge when a lot of Canadians are affected by this and it takes a while for them to wrap their heads around how it actually works?
It's who they're targeting. We are in a world where a lot of people are concerned about housing, about affordability, and I think unfortunately, and I do agree with like a lot of points that were said here, that people don't feel sorry for people who have that additional income, who have those additional cottages or assets when people don't have houses. Whether that's fair or not, that's something else. But I think, going to their vote base to show that we are trying to do something, because we don't want to take away your childcare. We want to still invest in healthcare, in housing, in pharmacare. We don't want to have an austere budget. So here's how we're going to have to pay for it. And I think if you look at Gen Z, younger millennials, people who don't have intergenerational wealth, what you're going to see is people being like, okay, that's your problem. That's never going to be me. I can't afford a house in Mississauga right now. So if you have additional assets, like, people won't feel bad for that, but they will feel more angry if you take away something else. So I think that's what their aim is. But I do think this tactic was very interesting because, to what Brad's point, they're playing politics. I don't think, as the Liberals, I've seen that tactic since I worked in the third-party leader's office. So I think it's interesting how they're trying to wedge in a way, and maybe even show that Pierre Poilievre is talking that I'm here for everyday Canadians. He has been successful with Gen Z. He has been successful with young people, but showing like actually they will probably frame it as we are trying to make the wealthy pay more money so that you can have all these other things, and Pierre Poilievre is in your corner.
Rob, can it work? Can a 16 percentage point increase in the inclusion rate close a 16-point gap in the polls?
I'd be surprised if this is an issue that people voted on. I think there was a tell in the statement that the official opposition put out today, and it addresses a point that Vandana made earlier. They called it a tax on home builders, which suggests that they are sensitive to the fact that those who want to own their first home might not be too sympathetic to those who have a second home, for instance. That, to me, was a tell that they're going to vote against it. There are other tells as well. The 20-year-old Pierre Poilievre's essay on the evils of capital gains taxes.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's changed his mind about that. The 2005-2006 iteration of the Conservative Party, which decided to make a cut in the GST because they wanted to clearly be identified as the party that cut taxes, they thought that that was more beneficial to them than all of the economic arguments pro and con against the GST cut. That identification as a tax-cutting party, I think, might be more important to Mr. Poilievre than an argument as to whether or not he's a pinstripe conservative or a Main Street conservative, because that's really what we're talking about here as well.
Yeah, no, he says he wants to run a small government that minds its own business, and that doesn't sound like a government that's going to raise taxes anywhere. But, Vanda, Lisa, the other thing that was raised today was the issue around doctors. The Medical Association is against this. They were looking for an exemption. Chrystia Freeland was asked about that today, and she made the point that provinces are going to benefit from this. Just listen to this clip.
We calculate that provinces and territories, as a result of the increased capital gains inclusion rate, will have increased revenues of around $12 billion. I would invite Canadians who feel that our doctors should be paid more to suggest that provinces and territories should be using some of that revenue to increase the actual salaries, the rate of compensation of doctors.
So, Lisa, what do you make of that? Because in some collective agreements, negotiations with the provincial medical associations, they got the right to incorporate instead of getting a raise, to take advantage of the tax benefits. And now the feds are being criticized for that, saying, hey, there's going to be a whole lot of provincial money. Maybe you can pay your doctors a bit more now.
It's ideology, right? Are you going to get paid by the T4? Are you going to get paid by investment? Are you going to be a small business? Or are you going to be a salaried doctor? Clearly, we know now where the federal government wants to push people, and that's into having salaried doctors instead of having small businesses that employ other people. And for me, that's just another sign of bigger and bigger and bigger government. So I think that's her tell, that they think it's perfectly fine for doctors to be salaried employees of provinces instead of the construct that they currently have, which actually is beneficial for other people having jobs in the system.
Brad, do you think that's an effective pushback on the anti-doctor criticism of this tax hike?
Yeah, I think it's a little weak. And if we're going to go back and debate, whether doctors should be salaried or fee for service, we got to go back to 1960.
A long way.
Doctor strike in the great province of Saskatchewan. We don't have time. We have a new studio, but we don't have extra hours.
Same 2-hour show, right?
To cover it off. No, I mean, listen, you're going to just. I watched that press conference very carefully, and the clips are being, sent around through social. We've talked about how, the communications challenge that the Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister may have on this. I don't know. I know that she's the author or the sponsor of the tabling of the Ways and Means motions because that's her job. Just go in and say this is about whether or not we can afford the programs we want, and if you make all this money, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for the Canada that we want. If we start getting into but you're better. Some people who have got money, they're doctors. Some doctors don't have money and they don't have a second household. Some people that have jobs that we don't hold, as special as in the healthcare professional, they have 4 or 5 houses, right? So we just got to double down. If you're going to take on the Conservatives, keep it on the Conservatives. And get under the doctors, but the doctors' lobby is going to push back on this, and the Liberals have made the choice that they're going to plow ahead with this. And if they wanted to exempt them, they would have. It's too late now, unfortunately, for the doctors' lobby. But they're just going to have to double down and keep to the principles here. We're taxing those who can afford to pay a little bit more out of the pandemic to cover off the costs of those that have been left up behind following the pandemic. And then end the sentence there.
Okay, I got about 60 seconds left. Rob and Vandana, your final thoughts.
Well, it's interesting. The last time that the Conservatives voted with a Liberal government on something that involved this kind of money was when Stephen Harper decided to vote in favor of Paul Martin's Medicare bill, because he said, I'm going to take it off the table. This is something that we're in favor of. This isn't the same thing. This is, I think, a fundamental kind of fiber of the party issue. I just cannot see them voting in favor of a tax increase. I just can't see it happening.
Vandana, your party's trying to pivot back to class, right? Like in 2015. What do you think?
Well, the most popular policy at the time was the increase of tax on the 1%. And I think, but to Brad's point, I think you have to keep it simple. Capital gains is very complex. I think to make a good argument on why we're investing in Canadians right now, why we don't want to have an austere budget, why we are doing this so that we can pay for the services that we're delivering to Canadians.
Okay, we got to leave it there. It was a great conversation. I want to thank the Power Panel for being here. Lisa Raitt, Brad Levine, Vandana Cotter, and Rob Rousseau. Thanks so much.